get started. Okay, I think, got it?
You do.
There we are. Welcome, everybody, to our first Senate Democratic Caucus of the 2024 session. It is wonderful to have you all here. I'm Allison Clarkson. I'm the Senate Majority Leader, and it is wonderful to have you all. As you know, this will be live. This is streamed on our YouTube page, and today we have nobody absent, which is wonderful, so we don't have anybody on Zoom. But we are a strong 23-person strong caucus, and we have several chairs out because we have a money chairs meeting at the same time. We normally meet on Tuesdays, and we welcome everyone to come and join us. Tuesdays at 12:15 right here in the lounge. And we have a leadership team this year. I'm the Senate Majority Leader, but we have Andy Perchlik, who will be here in a moment, who's our Assistant Majority Leader, our whip, and we have Senator Rebecca White right here, who's oversees communications and keeping us moving in all directions. So it's, anyway. So our hope is that we will do a combination this year in our caucus meetings together here on Tuesdays, that we'll do a combination of both committee updates, which we have often done, but also some deeper dives into policy issues that all of us are having to deal with, but that our committees may not individually know as much as we might and or need to know on some of these subjects. Let's take school construction, for example, something that, I don't serve on education and I don't serve on finance, but we are all going to have to be dealing with a deeper appreciation of school construction, school finance. And so we're probably going to have Brad James and Nicole Lee come in and give us a deeper dive into school construction and the challenges we face in financing some of that and how we're going to finance it and how those bonds work in each of our communities. So I would appreciate if anybody has a policy issue they would like to do a deeper dive on that they think the whole caucus is going to need to know about, but may not be dealing with in committee. I would appreciate knowing about that and help working with you to invite the right people in to talk about that, if that makes some sense. And so I would like to begin. We have a lot of new people here in the State House, as we all know. I'd like to begin by introducing you to Megan Cannella, who is our new supervisor of the committee assistants and the committee work. And so, Megan, we welcome you. And if you'd like to come a little closer, because I think our microphone is dealing with.
Oh, yeah, right here. I got it. Microphone.
Microphone is right here. Oh, so I.
Just for the Zoom. Yeah.
Is this for the Zoom or the YouTube?
Well, yes.
So, does it have to be turned on? Should be on. So, Meg, take it away. We welcome you. It's lovely to have you, and everybody needs to know who you are.
All right. So, thank you for the warm welcome. I am Megan Cannella, and I've been here. I started on October 23rd. So Peggy Delaney and I had a little bit of overlap before she set off to Utah to ski her way through retirement. Before coming to the State House, I was working at Norwich University for 8 years, teaching in the English department. I taught the required writing class that freshmen had to take. I taught public speaking, and I taught an advanced academic English class. My degree is in teaching English to speakers of other languages, so I'm accustomed to working with international and multilingual student populations. In addition to teaching at Norwich, I was an academic advisor for 40 international students. Mostly in my time there, we're coming from Nepal, India, and I had a cohort of 14 students from Saudi Arabia for 4 years. All of those students were majors in computer security and information assurance. So I had lots of hats while I was there. I was very excited to leave the field of teaching, teaching in the post-COVID world. was more rough than teaching in the during COVID world. So I'm really excited for a change of pace here. I do not miss writing lesson plans and grading essays at all whatsoever. And I'm excited for a fresh start here at the State House.
And thank you. We've had some relatively recent additions too to our committee assistants. So thank you for being able to be so flexible and turn to so quickly. Yeah,
we've hired 9 new committee assistants, and I thank you for your patience and understanding with all of us as we learn the ropes of the position.
Well, we're very grateful. Thank you. And anybody have any questions for Megan? We're going to have hopefully Kevin next week, so we're just going to meet everybody, most new people. Anybody have any questions for Megan? Right? You know how to find. We know how to find you.
Yes. Right. I'm staffing Senate Transportation, so I'll be spending a lot of time in room 3. That's where to find me most of the time. Indeed.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Phil is being interviewed, and for those of you who don't know, you must know if you walk through upstairs, Vermont Public is interviewing a range of people upstairs. Clearly some of us are considered chopped liver. So, but Phil will be down in a minute because Phil has some things he wants to share with us. But I just would love to remind us of what some of our priorities are, our big umbrella priorities for this session. Certainly in Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs today, we kicked it off with the whole discussion of flood recovery. But obviously flood recovery is going to be first and foremost in our minds as we work forward, improving our disaster preparedness, everything from government operations to economic development, businesses to housing, all so impacted by our floods this summer. Our second ongoing crisis, the housing crisis, is obviously another one of our top priorities, and many other sub-priorities fit under that. Some of the updates to Act 250 will be happening in that, both in our committee and in natural resources, which we will hear about, I hope, in a second. And then, of course, our third priority, which never ceases to be our major priority, is adapting and reducing climate change. The two things we have to do at the same time: continue to rein in fossil fuel consumption and reduce our contributions to climate change, and at the same time mitigating the impacts of climate change that are already coming our way. And then, of course, the bucket that is many, many other things that are so important: community health and public safety. Huge need for addressing public safety, which we'll be hearing from Senator Sears, but and our mental health crisis. I mean, we have so many ongoing huge needs in healthcare reform, in mental health, and those will continue to be addressed. So I'd say those are sort of our 4 big themes that we will be working on, and of course, all within some budget challenges that we face. Although the revenue picture is rosier than I think our governor would like to see, we nonetheless know we all are going to have the revenue challenge of the COVID and ARPA money disappearing. We're going to be able to redirect some of that, but most of that is now being spent and is no longer there for us as a resource. So anyway, I would, when Phil comes, we'll turn it over to Phil, but until Phil comes, I'd really love, I know it's short notice, but to touch with some of the chairs on what some of your priorities are. And I know you've been discussing them this morning, and we'll be discussing them this afternoon. But this is a slightly different audience, and we welcome all the lobbyists and who are here, which is great, and all our visitors who are here with us today, which is great, and we appreciate you being here. But perhaps as I look around the room, not going to touch on the finance committees so much, but I think on committees of policy committees, I start, and maybe we'll start on this side of the room. So Senator Sears, if you wanted to start, I'll give you this. Oh, okay. Do you want me to?
No.
Okay, great. So Senator Sears, who chairs, as we know, our judiciary, Senate judiciary.
Well, we had a lively conversation about priorities this morning, and also met with the governor's legal counsel about the governor's priorities for public safety. So I would say that looking at the current, with one of our priorities is the ghost guns and banning those so-called ghost guns. Another priority was something regarding bail, and we have to have a lot of discussions about it, but I think people are frustrated to hear conditions of release being violated time and time again and nothing happening. And so there's a number of bills that have been put in concerning bail, and we'll take those up. It's also a priority for the governor, and we're glad to have him on board on that. We also want to have a discussion in the environmental sense, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Senator Bray about suits against big oil for the cause of climate degradation. The bill hasn't been introduced yet, but will be before the 12th. Other bills in judiciary will deal with continued looking at public safety issues, and a number that are escaping me right this minute. But as you know, a lot of the bills that were introduced today went to judiciary, so we'll have our fair share. And I would say, and since none of them were introduced by me, I guess that we've got a few in the hopper coming. One of the interesting priorities that Senator Bachowski brought up, and I think it's an important one, is having the system, that the civil system regarding victims of rape and sexual abuse being similar to the criminal in terms of the evidence, because we've had cases where women have, particularly women, but I suppose some men, have charged somebody civilly and then have their payments reduced or their settlement reduced because they wore a provocative dress or something like that, which would not be allowed in the criminal. So that's one of the issues that may not have a lot of attention to it, but one of the issues we're going to take up. And there's several others, so stay tuned. We'll have fun. But public safety will be high on our priority list.
I'm going to interrupt the chair's priority updates because our pro temp has arrived.
Well,
is that okay?
It's okay.
Yeah, we're gonna update. We're gonna give it over to the pro temp to give us a sort of from the helm.
Good to see everybody. And you probably know what I'm going to say from what I said on the floor this morning. But I have been very, very happy to see all committees picking up flooding as their top priority and looking at climate change, climate mitigation, and sustainability as things that we all have a stake in, some obviously more directly than others, GovOps, natural resources. But I know there's work being done in finance and economic development across the spectrum. So I think the state is looking to us at this point to engage. We've been conducting oversight with the administration, but now that we're back in session, it's directly on us to be working to make the future more secure for those communities. If there are any ways that we can fill gaps that you've noticed in your districts, places where FEMA isn't picking up the slack, because I think many people outside of this building have been underwhelmed by the amount of help they're getting from FEMA. We definitely need to be doing that. I know Anne in finance. Okay. I know that her committee is going to be taking up a tax bill similar to one we did after Tropical Storm Irene to make sure that communities are not, that they're held harmless for properties that they can't collect revenue on. So things like that, that have an immediate impact, that plug a gap that people might not have foreseen. That's what I'm hoping we'll be working on these first couple of weeks. But then, whether you've been here a long time or just came to the Senate, you know that we're always doing 5 things at once. So committees are going to be moving other things forward, but I'm glad that House and Senate are in agreement that emergency response should be our big focus. So with that said, the only thing I wanted to point out is, you noticed I mentioned we have a new Senate disclosure form. And that is not going to be anything new in terms of information you give out, because it mirrors the Secretary of State's form that you filled out to be a candidate. So that will upgrade what we're doing in terms of disclosure. And I think that's all to the good. If you would do me a personal favor and have those done by Friday and filed with the Senate Secretary, I would really appreciate it, because inevitably what will happen is, starting next week, all the news outlets will go through our disclosures in the House and the Senate, and they will look them all over. And I would love it if we were 30 for 30 in terms of filed forms by Friday, so that the headline was, Senate is awesome in terms of ethical disclosure. Yes. So with that, I'll let the chairs continue.
I think we're going to continue on this side, so why don't we go to Senator Bray and then Senator Hardy.
Okay.
We're doing a quick update.
Sure. Quick update. So I'll follow right on what the theme for the day, which is being responsive to the flooding as a up close and personal piece of the bigger challenge of responding to climate change. So we have, on the recovery side, we've been blessed in Vermont by having Vermont Strong really means something. People have really responded incredibly well, helping neighbors get out of really bad situations. We're also, at the same time that we want to make sure that those programs work well, we want to continue work for the long haul. And, so I've been calling it, Vermont Smart, like focusing on prevention. And so the major bill that we're starting this Friday in Senate Natural is related to exactly to flooding. So it includes 3 different portions. One is addressing river corridors and floodplains. We manage them piecemeal right now. And just like the grid, the electric grid is something you manage as a whole because it works as a whole. We don't manage watersheds as a whole. We manage town by town, piece by piece. We manage what happens in floodplains and river corridors. So we're proposing shifting to a organized, comprehensive statewide approach to doing that. It also addresses wetlands. So one of the things that helps with keeping things from flooding is having places for water, high water to go. Wetlands are one of those places. And then one of the other things that helps us manage heavy rain events, which are unfortunately becoming more and more common, are dams. There are 1,100 dams in the state of Vermont, and some of which are flood control dams. We are understaffed in terms of being able to address. We only have 1 full-time permanent position in the state in charge of dams. So this bill focuses on those 3 places where work now is oriented to prevention for the long haul and making infrastructure investments and planning investments and management investments all the way around. There are other things that will be going on in committee, but I'll only mention one other for the moment, and that is climate change being such a widespread and challenging topic to take on. We always want to make sure that we have the best possible data. So next Wednesday, we're going to be having a panel in with members of the administration and others to help us look, what is the best data? Like, where are we now compared to a year ago? What is happening on the programmatic side that's helping? What's the administration bringing forward for programs for the coming year or beyond? And so we want to get the data, have the best possible information in committee so we can make well-informed decisions about where we are, what's working, where we could do better, and what's next. And I'll quit there. There's other things that I emailed the caucus, the whole Senate actually, outlining some of the bills that I know will be in our committee. And that's it for now. Anything else? Okay.
Remind any of you who take light, we have lots of fabulous snacks waiting for you. Healthy ones too.
Healthy ones too. I highly recommend, as Senator Bray pointed out to me, the chocolate covered pretzels. They're very good. Eat them so I don't. Okay, so government operations. I don't want to get ahead of my committee because we haven't met yet. So I'll just be just broad, but again, as Senator Clarkson said, flood relief specifically from a government operations perspective. Obviously, how does the government respond during a climate disaster? How did we respond? What did we learn? What could we do better next time? Because there will be a next time. But also, how does the government function when the government itself is the victim of a climate disaster or emergency? As we know, much of Montpelier was flooded, including many government buildings and government operations. And then at our local level, a lot of towns, municipal offices, fire departments, libraries, wastewater treatment plants, et cetera, were flooded. So how does the government become more resilient in the face of climate disasters as well? So that's from the sort of government operations perspective. Also, emergency management and planning, and our alert system, our 211 system, all of the sort of government entities that we rely on in a crisis, and to make sure that they are functioning well and that we can do better next time. So that's one, and we're starting testimony on that on Friday. And then we have, from last session, we have a constitutional amendment that we are going to try to get out early. This is an amendment that would change the requirements for the 4 county officers, sheriffs, state's attorneys, assistant judges, and probate judges, and make a change to our constitution that allows in the future the legislature to put criteria on those positions for an officer to remain in office. So, for example, for sheriffs, if a sheriff loses their law enforcement certification, then they would no longer be qualified for that office. That is just an example. That's not what the amendment says, but it's what it would put into place in the future. So that will be coming out, and that is one of those things that will need a full caucus to go into the details about, given the weight of a constitutional amendment. And then also, as those of us who've been around throughout COVID, we know we have created open meeting flexibilities because of the COVID disaster, and pandemic. We kept re-upping them, including last year. And we said last year we are going to do it one more time, and then that's it. Then we're going to put into place a new world order, so to speak, for open meetings. So that we are going to do, and we're going to get that out to you. We started that conversation last session. We're going to get that out to you. And then there are many other smaller municipal issues and government operations issues, but we are also going to come back to the conversation about legislative pay and legislative compensation. I've talked to many of you about that. If you have questions, if you want to co-sponsor, there will be a new bill. If you want to co-sponsor it, or you have questions for me, please come see me. I want to make sure that everybody who wants to talk about it with me, or the pro tem or the majority leader, have a chance to do that. So thank you.
And if you can kind of pass it
To Bobby.
That'd be great. Senator Starr.
Thank you. Yes, thanks a lot. It's great to be back and good to see all of you folks. But in ag this morning, we had a good discussion on a variety of issues, and flooding has already come up. And what happened with ag is a lot of ag land got flooded, and what it did is it caused a loss of feed for some animals, and especially dairy animals and turkeys. And so we've got the ag agency coming in tomorrow to report on how they've got to buy and sell page going over there so farmers can look up to see where they can get feed. But we'll know more in the near future on the price of that and how that's going. The organic farmer relief program that we did last year, never heard one complaint from that. A lot of thank yous on behalf of our part in the legislature to pass that. And lo and behold, we did do a good job, but we came up short a couple $100,000, which on 6.9 million, you know, it was a pretty close estimate. So we're going to work and try to get that squared away so the last 4 organic farmers can get compensated like the rest of them. The right to farm bill, we're going to be dealing with that issue. That's a 25-year-old law that needs updating to protect and help our farmers that we have left. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but we're at the present time, we're under 500 farms in Vermont, which is not a very nice thing to have to say. I think when I came to the legislature, there was like maybe 8,000. So a lot of the small guys have gone by the wayside, and even the big guys are having it pretty rough. We're going to look at New York recently passed a bill banning neonics. And that would take effect in 2027. And we're going to look at that again and see if there's other products that could be used to help farmers with their corn and their seeds and not be a neonicotinoid. You know, there's some reason we're losing our bees and things, and they seem to think that could be one of them. But that, I'll leave it at that. We've got a host of other issues that we're going to be dealing with, and hopefully we'll keep you informed, and they'll all be super good issues.
Why don't you pass it to Dick and
Yep.
pass it to Senator
Hi, Dick.
Yeah, the only issues we have naturally because of the flooding is the fact that we lost a lot of bridges and a lot of town roads, and we're just trying to play catch up. FEMA's going to help out because the flood just affected municipalities all over the place, and like I said, a lot of small bridges and roads, and where you're going to get the money to fix it. So that's what we're hoping for, is to work on those subjects right now. Thank you.
And are you going to do education? Oh, okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm speaking for Chair Campion, who couldn't make it today. But yes, thank you. There we go. Vice Chair of Education, Senator Martine LaRocque-Ulick. We have not met yet to discuss our priorities. We're going to be doing that at 1:30, but I think it's safe to say that literacy is going to be at the top of the list. And as you mentioned earlier, school construction will also be something that we will wrangle with this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Lyons, Health and Welfare. It's great to be here, back. So in terms of the emergency areas, and loss of housing is one. So emergency housing needs is displacement as a result of flooding. That will be embedded in one of our priorities, which is housing overall, and how to provide services for folks when housing is needed, whether it's in an emergency or whether it's more long-term. So we'll be looking at housing along with economic development and judiciary, trying to understand what we can do, particularly when we see events such as we saw this summer. There are other areas that we will be looking at as we go through other of our priorities. And obviously, I think we have a chance to talk about priorities again next week, more in depth. But the substance use disorder, mental health issues that are precipitated as a result of displacement or other results of flooding or disasters. We saw that during Irene, and we see it again this summer. So we'll be looking at things like emergency medical technician response and the needs that they have to provide services. We'll also be looking at, along with GovOps, on the 211 hotline, which expanded, and how to have that readily expanded when there are emergencies. And then finally, obviously, with climate change and these ever-growing disasters, we're seeing an influx of diseases coming. So tick-borne diseases in particular, we don't have a bill on that. We did have a bill on that a few years ago, but we do know that the Department of Health is working very closely with CDC to prepare for these types of diseases. And they're not just human diseases, but certainly Senator Starr in agriculture will be concerned about some of the invasive species and organisms. I won't talk fully about our mental health, substance use disorder priority, but one of the priorities that we will have, and I would like to talk about further another time, so we can give other folks a chance to speak, and that is the healthcare reform work that we're doing. We began healthcare reform work last year with Act 167. That is ongoing. We have other bills in this year that will begin to systematically improve our healthcare access, our healthcare quality. You've heard this before: cost, access, quality. So we'll be looking at healthcare reform in depth. We have other bills that are critically important for public health, and I'll keep you informed as we go forward. But so the things that we're looking at broadly: housing, substance use disorder, mental health, healthcare reform, and embedded within each of those are opportunities for looking at how to respond to climate change and to emergency management issues. So I will turn it over now to the next important.
Yeah, great. We're going to go to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and then we're going to end on Senate Finance.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry I missed something, so I hope this isn't repetitive. I'll just try to give you a sense of our timing and how we're thinking about this process, because I think a lot of people have bills on housing, economic despair, a number of different issues. And I would agree with Ginny on our top themes, public safety, et cetera. Our goal, now that I think my committee tacitly agreed with me, is that we vote out a housing bill in early February. It's, moving in different places, but this is something that a lot of committees have to look at. And I think Vermont, because we also like committee bills, or I do at least, where they don't have numbers for a long time. We really like to do our work and then sort of get to the point where we can share something fully with the public that has a number and is ready to move. So that gives us about 5 weeks. And what we're trying to do is anyone who has a housing or, climate infrastructure related issue that would make sense for our bill, to ask to come in and present. We are looking at the flood bill in the House, the housing bill in the House. There's a number of different bills, Seth Bongart's work, et cetera, and we'll have them come present and then decide what to fold into our bill when we can build consensus. So we are truly open to any and all ideas. I'm sure this was said in some slightly different way, but we are looking at Act 250 reform. That will be the centerpiece of this bill. And when I say that, I mean deduplication. And in fact, I was just on VPR saying that I think what we hope to do and what we're seeing from the studies that are coming to us would return us to the roots of Act 250, would actually give us compact settlements with protected working and green spaces in between that. We just need the density to actually exist in our communities where we know we need to grow. our population centers. And we need to stop the chilling effect of the process on creating 9 units here and 9 units here and developing more sprawl. The other thing is we always talk about Act 250 as deciding on these things on your front porch. That is not the same as taking a project to the Supreme Court twice because you can afford to do that. And there are people who really game the system, and that cuts out a lot of the democratic ways that people have tried to develop more housing that 80 to 90% of people agree should be in their communities. So that's going to be our housing bill. Then we'll look at economic empowerment. So that includes baby bonds, a veggie, et cetera. Labor. We have a constitutional amendment that Senator Hashim has put in that has 20 co-sponsors. So remind yourselves, you probably are a co-sponsor. And we're going to take that up. And then we're going to look at consumer protection, AI, some data privacy if it's ready from the House, et cetera. And that is our work.
Great. And Senator McDonald, Vice Chair of Senate Finance.
If Senator Cummings were here, she'd say, we are ready for other committees' bills to show up in finance. That's when we tend to get to work and the pressure is on. So start early, be prolific, and don't wait until the last minute.
Well, that was succinct. Again, I'd like to remind all of you for our policy deeper dives in caucus to get me ideas so that we can get people. We'll probably do a short deeper dive next week and then further updates for people who weren't here. But anyway, I would really appreciate you getting me the deeper dives that we think everybody needs to hear about. Is there anything else? We have time. We have 5 minutes. So if anybody has a pressing bill they want to chat about that needs a couple co-sponsors, is there anything else, Pro Tem, that you want to chat about? Okay. So anybody have a bill they want to
Okay, I just want to mention a bill, and then Martine has her hand up. I have a bill that was brought to me by our DPW folks, Department of Public Works. They're not considered first responders currently, and they would like to be considered first responders. So essentially that's what the bill does. There is not a cost at this point to the bill, is my understanding. but don't quote me.
I have a bill here. If you'd like to sign on, it will eventually, hopefully, make it to transportation. Where I live, there are a lot of bike commuters, folks who commute on their bikes, on scooters, on e-bikes, et cetera. This would make it so that tinted windows would not pass inspection. They're very dangerous when you're a biker or a cyclist and you can't make eye contact with a driver. It's extremely dangerous. So I hope that you will consider signing on. Anybody else?
So I have a bill here that also I think would go to transportation, but also maybe judiciary. I don't know. That is a secondary enforcement bill. So a couple of years ago, Hal Colston and I had a study done looking at non-public safety traffic stops and having them not be a primary offense, but something that they could either send you a ticket for or send you a notice to fix your tail light, or if you were pulled over for a primary offense, they could then cite you with this additional offense. But this comes out of one, traffic stops being the most dangerous interaction for police officers, but also the bias we see in traffic stops. So it has a list of stops that were deemed under this report to be not an immediate public safety threat that would no longer be primary enforcement. So if you want to sign on to that, I have this over here. Anybody?
Hi, I have a bill that I'd like signatures on, which comes from a constituent asking that all municipal jobs be posted. Apparently that doesn't happen in every town. Sometimes your uncle gets to be the treasurer or whoever. So this would require that jobs be posted in municipalities.
I'll be quick. I sent these to everybody in the caucus, 2 bills, one about library modernization. We had a status of libraries in Vermont report that passed a couple of years ago, and the report came out on November 1st, and the bill implements a number of the provisions in that report. The librarians love it. So if you're a library person, come and talk to me about the bill if you're interested. I'd like to get it in today. And then or tomorrow. And then the other one is Medicaid expansion bill. The library bill is Martine and I have worked on it together. The Medicaid bill, Ginny and I have worked on it together. And this I sent it to all of you as well, an expansion of our Medicaid program, specifically targeting underinsured people who are above the income level that is currently for Medicaid. And I can talk to you about the details because I know Medicaid is a very complicated thing if you want. Thank you.
No. I'm going to be turning in right after this caucus the bill I mentioned earlier in the committee report. So that's the bill on river corridors, floodplains, dams, and wetlands. So if you would like to be on that bill, please sign before you leave today. Thanks.
Great. Anybody else? Great. Then I think with that, we will meet again as a caucus on Tuesday at 12:15. Thank you all, and